Welcome again to another episode of the Dialed and Driven Hockey Mentality Podcast, brought to you by Vaughn Custom Sports. My name is Chris Palmer. I'm a mental performance coach for hockey players throughout North America and Europe. I'm sitting across from Jeff Lerg, former professional hockey player. This whole podcast, as you know, is about getting you to where you want to go. And no better way to start off than Natalie with our questions.
Yeah, I'm Natalie Ferentz, and I am going to dive us into our question and answers. So, first question we have today is, what are productive questions I should ask my coaches to help my development?
Great question. Also, our questions are on our Dialed and Driven website. They can go right on there. So that's a great question from one of our youth athletes. I would say questions you can ask your coach. First off, don't just ask a question to ask a question. Like, that drives me more nuts than just not asking anything. Like, when you just say something when you already know the answer because you're seeking attention, it's just a waste of time, and experienced coaches will see right through that. But really, the question should be relevant to what the coach is discussing. Like, if he's drawing up a penalty kill scenario, when you go up and ask him what the power play breakout is, he's going to look at you like you're crazy. So it has to be relevant to what's being discussed or what the coach is trying to get across in terms of his coaching points. But secondly, make it that it isn't like a selfish type question. Like, make it more team oriented when applicable. Like, every coach will want that player on his team that's all about the team. So it might be something that you have to do or you're being tasked to do, but make it be relatable to, like, how does this help the team or help us have success?
Do you want to give an example just so they have something, just an example of something?
Yeah. So I'll go back to that power play breakout scenario. Like, if you're actually working on the power play and coach is telling you to swing left, coming this way, and you actually have a really detailed question, like, well, why would I swing this way when the flow of the play is going the other way, for example? Then it's an actionable question to be like, oh, well, this is taking place so that Johnny can pass the puck to Timmy and Timmy can give you a long pass. Like, that's a real example of something that might make sense. But before you even ask the question, ask yourself, what is the point of this? And what have we already talked about? What have we already discussed? Challenge yourself first.
So interesting talking about from the team perspective. I was going the other way. I was talking about, what can I do better? What can I do to contribute more? And I think sometimes going to a coach and letting them know that you've actually thought about it before is a big thing. Like, if you really just put it all on them, it's kind of hard for the coach. But if you do say, hey, by the way, I know I fell apart here. I know that I had a turnover, and it was a turnover because I was in the wrong place, and I tried to back check and fix it up. I'm going to be working more on that, coach. But is there anything else you want from me? Is there something that you see me doing out there that you just wish was different? I think just being really, really specific like that helps a lot.
Awesome. Well, our second question reads, what did burnout or slumps look like for you, and how did you get through them?
Well, I did not like hockey in the summer. Like, I took time off. I had that feeling of burnout at the end of the hockey season, and end of spring hockey. Toward the end of May, I was done with the pads. I wanted to put those away, take some time, get to the pool, get to the golf course, do my morning workouts with my friends, and just be a kid. So burnout to me was like, I gave everything I had during the time that mattered most, and I needed time away. And that's really the message we try to continue to keep reiterating. Like, if you get to that point in October or November when you're the hockey player in the middle of the season, then obviously the time and energy and effort and resources you spent prior to that have failed. You want to feel like that at the end of the season. So that was burnout in my life. And then I put my time toward athleticism being built, workouts and other sports.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's a perfect segue to today's thing. We'll talk about in a couple minutes. I think sometimes you can get so lost in the day-to-day and it can just become a grind. Like, for me, when I was one of these runner guys, right, ran 75 to 90 miles a week, and I was a scholarship guy, thank God, because I was a poor kid and I needed the money. And it worked great for my freshman year and worked great for my sophomore year. But by my junior year in college, I was pretty tired. The thrill was gone. And I forgot why I was there in the first place. And I was sort of lulled into a sense of it's all going to be fine. And I didn't pay much attention, and I had some bad races. And we told you before, my coach threatened my scholarship, even though I was the number one guy on the team. It was a great wake-up call to me because I had this choice in that moment to get out of it, either out of fear or get out of it because what's the big picture vision? And for me, the big picture vision was finishing up in college and using the scholarship money. But I think for somebody in hockey, I think it's so easy to get so overwhelmed because so many of these guys do it year round. I mean, 12 months, it's so hard. And I think for them to have any kind of life, they have to find some way to balance things out. They have to find some way to pull back and decide, why am I doing this? And have some sense of purpose to get you through the bad stuff.
Yeah, and you kind of jog my memory on when I actually did feel burnout, and it was kind of like during the course of my youth, that was what I did. I took time off. When I became a pro, I played both in North America and Europe, and my team in North America, Toledo Walleye, we had a really deep playoff run, put us all the way into end of May, and then the next year I went to go to Europe, and I had to be ready for training camp by beginning of August, end of July. So that was the shortest time of like 80 some games of preparing and giving it your all. And like, I needed that mental downtime to amp back up. And I remember getting to Denmark. I played that year in Europe, and it was like by November, I was mentally fatigued. It was one of those things I had to kind of, dig in and battle through. But there was a period of time where it's like that excitement level just wasn't there. I had to kind of fake it till I made it,
Yeah. Well, thank you guys for answering those questions. And again, if you'd like to leave us a question, we would love to hear from you. So visit our website, dialedandrivenmentality.com, to leave us a question. So now we're going to get into our Dialed In Athlete segment. And Jeff, why don't you start us off today?
Yeah, I thought of this portion. So yeah, I thought of this Dialed In Athlete segment to discuss, and I usually like to take pride in researching and seeing who kind of fits the ethos of our mentality we're building. And I couldn't find anyone. So I'm passing this off. This week I struck out. No one lived up to our standards. So Chris,
your standard.
My standard of this, where I was going with it. But Chris, I know you had mentioned something when you got here today. Give us where your mind is on this.
I saw this thing on Linus Ullmark, who pulled himself out about a month ago because it was all just too much. He didn't know what he was doing. He was a goalie with Boston, and he wound up playing for the Senators, and just too much. And he couldn't take another moment. He literally didn't know if he wanted to play anymore. And whatever the reasons are behind the scenes, he pulled himself out. And a month later now, he's back. He's talking about it. He needed time to reset and figure things out because it just became too much and he wasn't able to play. So I think it's great that here's a pro guy who's figuring it out, right? He said it was too much, not unlike many people in the past. We've had Olympians who've pulled out of the Olympics before. Sometimes you got to know when enough is enough and pull back for your health, your mental health, your perspective. And he did that and he's back. And I think that's a great success story.
Yeah, I just talked about how much the grind mentally goaltending can be. This is a Vezina winning goaltender, the best goaltender in the league a few years ago, I think in 2023. And now a few years later, he's, has this feeling of anxiety and fear when he's playing, has no love of the game in the middle of a hockey season. And just he described what he felt as like just this over anxiousness while he played, which again, he was the best goalie in the league a few years ago. Now he had to struggle with this. So best thing he did was just acknowledge it, take time off, get some mental clarity, and rooting for him to come back and hopefully finish the season out on a strong note.
Yeah. Well, my guy's pretty opposite, I will admit. I chose Max Verstappen. He is a F1 driver, and his whole life has been about racing. Literally his whole life. His parents were racers. His dad was an F1 racer. And so what makes him so famous in the F1 world and relating to this podcast as our Dialed In Athlete is he was the youngest F1 racer and F1 winner. He is known famously for doing 1 year of F3 and skipping F2 entirely and jumping to F1, which is known to be extremely difficult. He was very criticized for it, but he does not like to look at the media, be involved with the media. He very much so gets away from all that circus. And he is known to hold some of the most staggering records in the history of the sport. And
He's dialed.
He is dialed. But what makes him so opposite from the rest of the athletes that we have discussed and the questions that we have discussed today is because he lives, breathes racing 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. He does these races and then immediately goes home and does the simulator. He's known for doing these 24-hour elite simulation races, which is just nuts, but he's dialed.
How old is he?
I think he's born in 1997 from, I think he's Dutch. So,
interesting. We're really expanding our sports knowledge. It is interesting. I'm not a big F1 guy. I had to ask you before, going from F3 to F1, is that like going from D3 to D1? And the answer was no.
Yeah.
What was the difference?
From my research, F3 to F2 to F1 is all about the cars, how fast you race, and the technology involved in the cars and just everything.
And you had mentioned this guy likes to live on like the edge of danger, so to speak. He doesn't always drive like stable cars. He wants to feel like he's on the edge.
Yeah, he drives a pointy setup that is very different from most drivers because it's not known to be stable. He's very known to just cut people off, aggressive, very strategy oriented. If someone takes his spot, he's coming for you on that next lap.
So we talked about last week and previously like process oriented. This guy seems to be taking process oriented to the extreme. And that's what we know publicly. Who knows what his private life is like? Obviously we always talk about trying to have a little bit of distraction management, but he's had success this whole time, right? He's the youngest racer, and I think he's one of the highest ranked in the world, if not the highest. I'm not sure, but sounds like, he hasn't quite yet hit the ditches on the pro ranks. We'll see how he reacts to that, but super process oriented.
Yeah.
How do you do a 24-hour simulation? That's crazy.
I couldn't tell you, but it's amazing on the dedication in which he gives to racing. I know he does have a family and kids, so I can imagine that it's a generational thing for him. But yeah, he is my athlete for today. And
I like it though, people who you just look at other areas, not even sports, like people that are in music, for example. Like if someone's parents were musicians, a lot of times that leads them into the musician world. So this type of dedication and the craftsmanship it takes it's kind of probably normal in his family.
Oh yeah, his family was racers too. So
and for his parents were both racers. And for us, it's like, what is this guy doing? He's crazy. He's psycho. But for the family, I'm sure they're just like, yeah, get on your simulation.
Yeah.
What are you waiting for?
Crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyways, that's our Dialed In Athletes of the Week, plural. This week, again, I couldn't come up with one. So thanks to Nat and Chris. Something that we can always learn a few things from is just copying others who've had success. So what was this guy's name, Nat?
Max.
We're going to learn from Max a little bit on the process-oriented approach and just being all in all the time when it makes sense. So anyways, thanks, Nat. Appreciate your questions and dialed in portion, and we'll get to work on the episode.
And now a message from our sponsor.
As a parent, you can see it. Your athlete has talent. They work hard. But one mistake can spiral into frustration, doubt, or shutting down completely. This is Jeff Lerg, host of this very podcast. Many young athletes are never taught how to handle pressure, failure, or expectations. Yet we expect them to perform in high-stress environments every weekend. That's why we created the Dialed and Driven Success Formula. It's a guided mentality program that helps athletes build confidence, emotional control, and personal responsibility. Skills that matter far beyond sports. This isn't about pumping kids up. It's about giving them tools they can use in competition, in school, and in life. If you want to help your athlete develop real mental strength, not just short-term motivation, visit dialedandrivenmentality.com to learn more. Strong athletes are built physically. Resilient athletes are built mentally.
So this week we're talking about how the big picture can get you through the small stuff. And everybody knows what this is like. You're working, it's the middle of the season, things are going well, and all of a sudden you hit your head on something. You get benched, the coach stops playing you, or maybe there's an injury, something that gets in the way, and it's so easy to get stuck in that and just spiral. And one of the ways, among many other things you can do to get back on this path to getting what you want, is to step back to the big picture of what do you want? And I don't care if you're a 13-year-old kid or if you're a 30-year-old guy in the NHL, everybody wants something. You're doing this for a reason. You might be doing it because it's fun. You might be doing it because you want to get to college. You might be doing it because you want to become pro. But whatever that thing is, when things get bad, if you step back out of the woods of that nauseating crap, because everybody's disappointed from time to time, you can step out of that for a minute. What am I doing this for? And if you've got a good enough reason to be doing this, it helps you fight back. It helps you get what you want. Just this week, I worked with a girl who actually has been playing a sport. I don't want to identify her because it's a sport outside of hockey. She's been playing this sport for years, since she's 5 years old. And she loves this sport. And just recently, I could hear the disappointment in her voice. She started working with me because she's not getting what she wants. Things aren't working out. She's got a coach who is measurably belittling, and she's losing confidence in herself, always very performance-oriented. And she had this big vision for going far, and all of a sudden she's talking about, well, maybe I'll just cut my career short now, and maybe I'll just go for something academically that's really important so I can have this really good job. I'm specifically trying not to give details. This person gave up this thing that they've had as a dream since they were 5 because a couple of bad things happened, and they were really bad things. But in the end, we got to talk just last night about pulling back for a second. What's the big picture for you? What's the thing you really, really want? And the thing she's wanted her whole life was to have this great career and to have this great sports career. But she gave up part of it because down in the mess of this stuff going on with her coach, things just weren't working. And it felt so bad that she started compromising and she pulled back. When we had a chance to really discuss how she really felt, what her big picture really was, she all of a sudden realized, gosh, I really did want this great career, and I want to take sports as far as I can go. And she realized that again. She had tears in her eyes during this conversation because she realized she was giving up on that because of the crap she was stuck in. So please, don't let the crap of what you're in hold you back. Step back for a second, decide what's the big picture, what's the big vision, what did I do this for in the first place? And if you get to that, you actually have a chance to get new energy to get through the bad stuff.
So, Chris, this is very intriguing. Did you say 13 years old?
13 years old, yes.
And female?
Yeah, well, this person's she's actually later teens. She's later teens, yeah. But I said even if you're a 13-year-old, talking to people here.
Okay, so we'll say for the sake of this, it kind of ties into something that I was researching this week. You know, we spend so much time and energy on trying to portray lessons and teaching points for our athletes. And then it kind of made me look back and say, well, why do so many modern day, current day athletes need our support and coaching? Right. So I kind of did this little research, and research shows that 70% of youth athletes quit organized sports by age 13. And that number in females are twice as likely to stop organized sports as compared to males as they go into their teenage years. And so very interesting that you're bringing this up. And you mentioned how her relationship or experience with the coach was one of the driving forces. And where my kind of thought process and then continued learning went was that the element of why youth athletes start, which is they have fun, right? It's fun to play sports. You know, we don't get into it as kids being like, oh, I can't wait for all these great life lessons. You know, like you get into it because you're like, this is fun. I'm around a team. I'm doing my thing. Like even if you're in an individual sport, like you have the most fun when you're finding success. So there was some element of success and accomplishment along the way. Kids have fun. But during the teenage years, one of the driving forces was that this fear of failure, this high level of anxiety, and not having a mentor or support system to work you through these tough times. And whether it be a direct mentor or support system or kind of a negative experience with the coach could drive you to just not have fun. Every time you get out to your field of play, you're just worried about not performing up to someone's standards, whether it's your coach or your parents or someone else around you, instead of just living in the moment. So interesting how you went through this past week on like, okay, what's really your why, your big picture? I looked back and I was like, well, it's, it was easy for me upon self-reflection, but also upon the national polls where this all comes from. It's like, hey, sports is fun. How do you find the way to keep having fun as you grow up into more competitive levels?
Just think of how hard this is. If you just take a regular person, your brain develops till you're 25 years old, which means it's not completely developed at 10, 11, 12. But what happens? You see kids who are 7, 8, 9, they're enjoying things. They're really enjoying their lives. But somewhere around 11, 12, 13, your body starts changing. The world seems to start changing. People become so much more self-conscious. It happens right in that zone. And it's so hard because you have the disadvantage that nobody's fully developed in their brain until they're 25. You've got all the social pressures, the comparisons. Don't get started on social media. It's like an amplification of every insecurity we have. And when you have all of that, that's hard enough. But then let's take a sport we used to love that was just fun, that we used to do good at, and let's add in pressure. Oh, gotta do this, gotta do this. We talked about before in November, during hockey season, people are thinking about where they're going to play the next season. You've got coaches soliciting kids in November to go play the next year. So they have to think about the future instead of now. And all of it feels like pressure. And, we talked about the NHL or talked about going to college when, girls and boys are little kids. Well, that's a little kid dream, and it's great. But as you get older and the comparisons, it feels like just too much. And when you put all that stuff in there, it becomes this perfect storm for, oh my gosh, I can't take another moment. But then in hockey, at least on the guy side, checking starts at 13. So now you've got guys at all of these different sizes. At 13 years old, you've got kids who are 80 pounds and 5 feet tall, and you've got kids who are 6 foot and 180 pounds. And you get blasted into a wall. So just think of all those things. It's so easy to lose what the big picture is. And when things are that hard, pulling back to decide, why did I do this in the first place? What did I really want to do? That's the fuel that gets you back in to handle all the awful things that can happen.
Right, but obviously, let's be real. Like, there's no teenager in the world that's like, oh, this big picture dream. Like, no one has that ability at that young of an age because you just haven't experienced life yet to even understand what's the difference.
Yeah.
So I guess in other words, for athletes we've worked with and who we've seen have success, they had a goal in mind of where they wanted to get to playing wise. And that's an easy way to put that as, oh, I want to play in college someday, or I'm a Red Wing fan because I'm from Detroit area and I want to play in the NHL. There's a goal in mind that's like, yeah, one day I want to do that. And the tough part is you don't know that it's not easy. You're just like, oh yeah, well, so-and-so. If I just play hockey all the way through, yeah, I'll probably get there. But that's not the reality of what sports is. So there's a little bit of that disconnect. And this is really just the reality hitting teenagers at a certain point in time. Like, man, this is tougher than I thought. That dream and that goal isn't as easy as I thought it would be to be accomplished, right? And that's where, where all these consistent messages that you've discussed, that I've discussed, all come in. And I think one of the best ways to help athletes get over that hurdle is not just saying, hey, go have fun, but the reality is I always had the most fun as a player when I was having success. And there's no player that loves being awful and loves losing every game and loves playing below their caliber of what they know they can do. Not one player in the world in any sport that has fun when they play poorly. So then it's got to have this little spiral effect, this loop of like, okay, what does it take to have fun? It's to be at my best. What does it take to be at my best? It's to block out the noise and go execute. And that's the same message that's been preached throughout all of our podcasts and our dial-in-driven success formula. It's like focus on what you can control and then go and execute it at the highest level.
Yeah, that's great. You bring up such a good point because this thing I'm talking about isn't a natural process. When you're 11, 12, 13, you're not being philosophical about your life and what am I trying to accomplish and that kind of a thing. But what they can do, and what happens a lot of times, I'll be talking to somebody and I've had people in total tears, like literal tears, thinking about they're going to quit, sitting in a Panera Bread, eating mac and cheese, and they still can't be happy. They're just so overwhelmed. And one of the ways we deal with the overwhelm is to actually start talking about, after you get out how you feel, why'd you do this in the first place? Why'd you do this? Like, you were young, and most of these guys started before they can remember, and they did it and kept doing it because they loved this thing. So to them, that was their big picture. And being able to remind them that, hey, this is something you loved. Is it worth it? Do you want to quit? You want to take your ball and go home? One of the things I talk about all the time is you can always take your ball and go home. You can quit right now. And letting people know that they're free to quit, getting them through feeling bad, and going back to why did they do this in the first place? That winds up being their why. That winds up being their thing that either re-engages them or they decide, I don't want this anymore. Even what you're talking about, you decided to become great. You just wanted to be great. And that was your why. You just wanted to be great at things. You still do that the rest of your life. So it is not normal for a 13-year-old to talk about the big picture. But anytime we go back to that bigger picture, we go back to, why are we doing this in the first place? We can at least come back to, hey, I wanted to get to AA, or I wanted to get to AAA, or I wanted to get to juniors, whatever the thing was. And once you're there, that's a big enough picture. It's a great picture. And it gets you back on the track instead of being stuck in this mucky crap.
Yeah, and just to kind of play off some of the topics we've had, and going back off our question earlier from Natalie, I actually had a female, age 13 or 14, who's a super talented athlete, really someone who, if she continues to develop, is right on the track for D1. And she always asks good questions. She asks relevant, timely questions that are all about helping her game improve. So when I've had conversations with her parents, I know where's she at, compared to, what her goals are. It's honest and easy feedback to say, hey, she's engaged. She's pulling you and your family into the games and practices and training sessions because she just wants to accomplish her goal. She lives in the moment. She has fun when she's out there, and she's engaged mentally. And so a lot of that was just really a great example to show what it actually looks like when the other stuff isn't pulling you down and you're just living in the moment, having fun. And you're not expected to have this grandiose vision at age 13. You're just expected, and the hope is that you just show up every day at your training, at your games practices, and just have the most fun possible and work to be the best you can possibly be. And a big part of that is being mentally engaged in the process.
Yeah. We were talking to Natalie before, and Natalie's one of these people who's like really, really driven, but she's also kind of chill as a person. She's both things. And it's interesting because she had talked to us before about how she really felt like, she really just sort of goes day to day and kind of works through things. But she does have a vision for things. When we talked about it, her vision, her big picture vision, was about being excellent, about making the most of her life, about doing these things. But she doesn't focus so much on it after the fact. Like, that's kind of her core. And she goes and she does A, B, and C things, and she puts her head down. One of the things I love is that she makes these really, really cool videos. I mean, our videos look good because of her, and she didn't have to work that hard, but she does because she cares about it, because for her, she has this belief in herself. She has this thing she wants to accomplish in her life. So even with her, as kind of chill as she is, she still has a vision for what she wants. So I just think it's super important. And let's go to an older age group for a second, if we can. When you get farther along in your career, like let's say it's the draft at 15 for guys, or let's say it's right around the college time for girls, whatever that is, it becomes so hard because it feels like the whole world's just jumping on you. Like, what am I going to do for here? This person's interested, or I don't have an offer. Somebody else has an offer. It can become so chaotic. You might just want to pull out. And I get that. But if you can find a way to not only puke out your stuff and feel bad, but step back for a second with somebody, a coach you trust, a friend you trust, somebody, and ask yourself, okay, as hard as this is, what am I really here for? What am I really trying to accomplish? Just that thought for a moment allows you to decide, is this going to be worth it? Is it not going to be worth it? Because eventually all these careers are over. But I don't want it to be over prematurely because of something bad that happened with a coach, or some injury you had, or something that happened. In the end, if you get stuck in the details of right now, it's easy just to react. And I don't want you to just be reactive. We're emotional, and that's great. But being emotionally reactive and making a decision that's a giant decision based on something happening right now robs you of having a chance of having a life and a career that you want.
Well, you're really talking about standards, which are behavior-based. because everyone's vision of where they see their life is going to change and evolve. Like, of course, I'm coming up on 40 years old. I didn't have this vision at 20 saying I'll be in this seat with a podcast and a business and mentoring and coaching people. I knew that I had a high level of standard for what I accepted in everything that I did, whether it be school, whether it be athletics, whether it be family life, etc. No different than Natalie. She's still in her 20s. That's what we're speaking of. There's a high standard, and whatever path and however the life unfolds, I know that my standard has to be up to what I established for myself as I was growing up. And you talk about youth athletes, that's where the proof's in the pudding. How do you show up every day and handle your schooling? How do you show up every day as a teammate? How do you show up every day in the gym or on the ice, whatever your field of play? Like, what is your standard? And it's very easy to just be mediocre. It's very easy. We say swimming in the sea of normalness. Super easy to be there. But what is your standard? Because you don't know how your life's going to unfold. You don't know where athletics is going to take you. But if you have a high level of standard, that'll help propel you to adjust to all the changes that are going to be upcoming. And I look back at some of my friends who are still involved within the sport. Some of my friends who are still involved within the sports world, whether they're working in the NHL or they're mentors or coaches around the country. Like those were people who, as teenagers and as early 20s, like they had a high level of a standard for how they handled themselves. And so it's easy to see why they're having success still in the world of sports.
Yeah. And that standard, they decided that's what they wanted to be. That's what they wanted. So really, just to summarize in all this, the reason why we're talking about this is we want to give you as many different tools as we can, as many different ways that we can have you look at the world, look at the hockey world, look at your life, and really use all these tools in whatever way you can. We don't expect you to grab all of this and start implementing, but we've seen the best players in the world fall apart. We've seen Olympians fall apart. We've seen people who, for whatever reason, they get so stuck in the details of right now and the disappointments of right now and the frustrations and the injuries or whatever it is, that sometimes it gets so overwhelming that you can implode. And the people who've imploded, when they get to that point where it's just enough is enough, they step back, either with a mental performance coach, somebody they trust in their lives, and they have a chance to really look at, like, what was this all about? And just seeing the goalie come back after a month. I mean, an NHL goalie who, playing for the Senators somehow decided it was just too much around Christmas time. And instead of being stuck in there, he pulled back. He looked at the bigger picture. He figured it out, and he's coming back now, and he's not unusual. Everybody has these kinds of things. You have these kinds of things. So when you hit your head on something, when things suck, when things aren't how you want them to be, it's okay to stay in that. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to even be down for a couple of days. But try to find a way to remember, what was your why? What was your purpose? What's the standard you have for yourself? That's the lesson, because if you don't look at your life from time to time and decide what it's all about for you, what are you trying to get done, even if it's something so simple that's just about the next 2 months, that's the guide. That's the thing that gives you the fuel to get where you want to go. Jeff, you want to take us out?
Yeah, and last little actionable step that athletes can take is when you're talking about the big picture, I can equate that into something they can do today. And that's when you're putting yourself through a grueling workout. Like, put your mind in the space with, what do I want to accomplish at the end of this year? You're doing a bike sprint for 30 seconds. Put your mind in the place of, oh, that's us. We're winning the state championship. And you're just putting your mind there, and it's going to help propel you and push through those tough times. So whether it's a tough time during training or when you're actually physically training, put your mind in that big picture view. What are you working to accomplish? Something I used to do all the time. I envision that championship trophy at the end of the football field when I'm doing a 110-yard sprint. I'm going to get that thing, and that's where my mind is. So that's what we're talking about. Keep that big picture in mind. It's going to help you through the grueling times. And for all of our athletes, remember to stay dialed and driven on your goals, as that's the only way to accomplish success. And if you haven't yet joined our newsletter, make sure to do so at dialedandrivenmentality.com. We'll continue with a lot of the messaging and athletes to learn from each and every week.
And that concludes today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review and subscribe to our YouTube channel. But most importantly, we'd love for you to sign up to our free newsletter. Visit our website, dialedandrivenmentality.com, and receive free weekly content. We look forward to chatting again next week.
Oh, Jeff Lerg! One of the best saves you will ever see. Keeps this game alive.
and the Hockey Mentality Podcast, Dialed and Driven.